Hello, everybody. Welcome to Sports Scope. I'm your host, Robert Butler, on this 26th day of October. We're 2 days away from the World Series, the start of the World Series, and of course, 3 days away from another college football weekend. Pretty decent sized game there in Ohio. I was going to say Ohio State. Ole Miss and Texas A&M probably would have been a little bit bigger of a game if A&M would have a better record right now, but I'll get into their problems. And I think it's stemming a little bit from NIL and a little bit for getting too caught up in the recruiting over coaching. We'll talk about that. Also, Keith Engel, TGI Sports. Now, Keith is from upstate New York, but he's a big, long time fan of the New England Patriots. I'm going to ask him about Bill Belichick and the situation here. Get Keith's take on Dusty Baker. Can Dusty Baker ever win a World Series? But first, not resting on your laurels. I've talked about this time and time again, is in life, if you want to be successful, first of all, you've got to work hard and you got to have a long game mentality. I'm not quite where I want to be at, but I'm on my way. And you have to be aggressive at times. The Philadelphia Eagles today made a trade for a defensive end, Robert Quinn, on their bye week. They're 6-0. Best record in all of the NFL, the only undefeated team. Do they rest on their laurels? No, they upgrade and they want to be prepared for their stretch for their next 11 games. And they go out and trade for Robert Quinn, a former Pro Bowler, former meaning last year, 32-year-old Robert Quinn out of Chicago, defensive end. I thought maybe a team like a Tennessee Titans who lost Harold Landry would get a Robert Quinn, but that's not the case. The Eagles give up a fourth-round pick. They stole a deal. This Howie Roseman is executive of the year, in my opinion. But they go out and get Robert Quinn. He has 7 sacks, by the way. He has 7 sacks through 6 games. He was a Pro Bowler last year. He's a 3-time Pro Bowler, 32-year-old player. This defense was 4th in yards allowed on defense. They were 5th in pass defense, 12th against the run, 15th in quarterback sacks. And Jeffrey Lurie, that's the owner. But Howie Roseman, the general manager, looked at that and said, that's not good enough. Okay, we're going to go out and make a deal and get a Robert Quinn from the Chicago Bears. And quite frankly, they were coming off of a big win Monday night against New England. Then they turn around. That tells you how bad of a loss that was for the Patriots. And same thing with Tampa. Tampa's coming. They're playing a team that's rebuilding, and then they get beat 21-3. New England at home plays a team that's just signaled today they're rebuilding and gets beat by double digits at home to a second-year quarterback and a rookie head coach. Going back to the Eagles, this puts the Eagles now with Fletcher Cox, C.J. Gardner-Johnson, Brandon Graham, James Bradbury, stole him off the free agent market out of former New York Giant because of a cap casualty there. Darius Slay at the other corner, and now Robert Quinn to add there on the as a defensive end. Just giving you another recap of their offseason. They signed, going back to last season, to March, when free agency in the offseason technically began for the 2022 season. They signed Hassan Riddick, a linebacker there. I just mentioned James Bradbury. They made a trade with Tennessee, first-round pick, one of many they had for A.J. Brown. They had another first-round pick and picked up Jordan Davis out of Georgia. And they got Nakobe Dean, and he's not even third-round pick, very elusive player from the University of Georgia as well. He's not even starting on this team. That's how deep this team is. If the playoffs begin today, I would at least have this Philadelphia team in the NFC Championship game. They would get a first-round bye, obviously. Then they would get a division game with that offensive line, with that pass rush, with those cornerbacks. All Jalen Hurts has to do is not mess things up. Not too much is being asked of Jalen Hurts as a passer. He's their Achilles heel on making his second and third reads. But when you've got that kind of offensive line, when you've got that kind of pass rush on the other side, you've got the cornerbacks that can cover, and you've got some speed there now at the linebacker position. You really don't have any weaknesses. You have little weaknesses. They were the team with the most cap money available coming up on the trade deadline. That's what made them have the ability to make this move. The trade deadline is, I think it's sometime next week after Halloween. It's in November. It used to be in October. I do expect to be more buyers than sellers, although maybe a Carolina Panthers would be a seller. At this point, I thought that the Seattle Seahawks would be a seller. But this is this reminds me, this is very close, and I don't think I'm being hyperbolic or exaggerating, Pickles, but this is very close to Von Miller being traded from the Denver Broncos to the LA Rams. Did not look like a big deal at the beginning, the first few weeks. First week, they trade for Von Miller. Tennessee loses Derrick Henry. They go all the way to LA last year. They beat up on the Rams and beat them decisively. A few weeks later, he starts to settle in, playing beside an Aaron Donald, and he goes on and propels them to help win them a Super Bowl. I'm telling you, this Eagles team, now there's a lot of football left. There's 11 games. They've still got 2 games versus the Giants. They got to play at Dallas. They got to play Washington again. But that being said, they're going to be able to run the ball, stop the run, and now they're going to have a pass rush. And mind you, they've got Dallas Goedert at the middle there at tight end. They've got a legit number 1 in A.J. Brown. They've got Devontae Smith there. He's pretty much a number 2 there. Pretty solid number 2 there. Second-year player out of Alabama with the vet there. They're making all the right moves. They did not rest on their laurels, and they're still adding. Also, on top of all that, these guys are playing chess, and everybody else is playing checkers. This reminded me of about 10 years ago when the Patriots were really, really rolling, 10, 12 years ago, when they were winning 13, 14 games a year and winning Super Bowls or going deep into playoffs. They were just stacking picks and making one great transaction after another. Adam Schefter reports, even after, this is what he put out on his Facebook page, ESPN's Adam Schefter, even after trading for Robert Quinn today, C.J. Gardner-Johnson last summer, A.J. Brown, and Jordan Davis on draft day, the Eagles still are scheduled to have 6 picks in the 2023 draft. And these guys, they'll probably do away with, I don't know, who is it? Fletcher Cox is getting long in the tooth. They'll probably cut him. They cut him this past year and brought him back. But you've got Jordan Davis. The Eagles are scheduled to have 6 picks in 2023, including 2 in the first round, theirs and the Saints. And then the Eagles are also currently have 2 number 2s and 24s, theirs and the Saints. So they are just playing on a high level. They're staying under the cap. They're making the right moves, okay? I looked at A.J. Brown's contract there. We know he's had a knee issue in the past, but he's not taking $20 million off the cap. I looked at his cap hit for the last, it is $4 and $5 million. You got to credit Howie Roseman, longtime general manager there. He's really playing at a high level. If they can find a way to get to the Super Bowl this year, you got to put him up in the category with some of the other great general managers in the league, guys like Ozzie Newsome recently retired. You got to put him up there with the Ravens' current general management staff now. And of course, guys like Les Snead, who's from the, I want to say he's with the Rams, and of course the Saints general manager as well. Those two are doing really well. Pittsburgh, good management, not so good on the defensive line. But Roseman is really, 6 picks already, and they've been trading like nobody's business and maneuvering around, because when you draft well and you develop well, you're going to have a luxury, folks, of picks and acquisitions. And you got to pick the right spots, pass rusher, corner. Look what the Rams did a few years ago. Let's go back 4 years ago. They made a trade for the top corner there and Jalen Ramsey with a failing Jacksonville team, okay? Look at what the Patriots done before they kind of went into their slump. They would find teams that are bad teams, and they would trade away players who didn't fit their scheme or whatever, and the player would flourish on that. They would pick players off of teams that were cap-count. Corey Dillon, for example, kind of like what Philadelphia did. That's what makes champions in the NFL. You've got to spend your money wisely and in the right spot. They did give a big contract to A.J. Brown, but the way it's divvied out, Pickles, it is a very good contract, very team-friendly for the Philadelphia Eagles, because I've got access, and I was looking at it, and I thought, man, these guys, a lot, and I'll talk about this, and I'm about to talk about a college story in a minute, but for the most part, a lot of Super Bowls are won in March. A lot of Super Bowls are made in March. The year that the Rams made a lot of moves there, made a lot of moves, getting receiver help, getting cornerback help, getting inside lineman, defensive lineman help, offensive lineman help just about 4 years ago. And nobody really saw them come in 18, but it all came together. Good running game. They made some mistakes along the way, re-signing, what was his name? Todd Gurley, who is now he's now retired, but they extended him. But I remember just about 4 years ago when they started making these moves and going after these big name players, people thought they were overspending and being over the top. Well, they found themselves in the Super Bowl that year. The Patriots beat them that year, but they did win last year. That offseason before that same quarterback they was in the Super Bowl with, Jared Goff, aggressive wins, folks, aggressive wins. So they move off Jared Goff, the guy that got them to the Super Bowl. They go get Matt Stafford, and then that same year, like I just said a minute ago, they went out and got Von Miller, a former Defensive Player of the Year. And I want to say he was also a Super Bowl MVP, but he was in his 30s. And getting up on a contract year, last year of his contract, and Denver wanted to rebuild, so they trade and give that second-round pick, which I think they flipped that over and gave it to Seattle and sitting with this disaster right now with Russell Wilson. But either way, I think it was a well of a move. Yeah, Pickle says they got the old saying, got them for a song. The Patriots back in those days, from 2007, I think it was the 2003 Patriots there, Pickles, who got Corey Dillon running back. He was really getting the football blues with the Cincinnati Bengals. Randy Moss was traded for a very high pick from the Raiders. Didn't do nothing with the Raiders. Got him for a song, like the old saying will say. The Patriots, the rest is history. He goes to the Patriots, breaks all these records. They didn't win the Super Bowl, but they went 16-0 in the regular season, getting all the way to the Super Bowl, only to come up just 3 points short of winning the whole thing, having the only perfect season since the 72 Dolphins. But the Giants were simply better there. But my point is, a lot of this stuff, when you see a bad player on your team, don't boo the player. A lot of times you need to look up there and boo that management up there, because those are the guys that are making these moves and making these teams bad or good. And Howie Roseman is the man of the hour, in my opinion. Kudos to the Philadelphia Eagles. Okay. Switching gears here. By the way, at 7:30 Central Time, 7:35, I will have on Keith Engel, TGI Sports. He knows a lot about baseball. I'm going to ask him about the Patriots, what we talked about last night, and what's his deal with the Patriots not being able to handle the mobile quarterbacks. Ask him about that. Ask him about Dusty Baker. Can he ever win a World Series? And I'm going to ask him about this after these messages. I want to give you a quick commercial break. I'll be back in a minute and 19 seconds, and we'll talk about this Texas A&M story. More to it than meets the eye. Stand by, folks. Hello, Sports Scope followers. After 5 years of doing this program once a week, balancing a 60-hour work week job, I've decided to do the program 5 days a week, 1 hour a night, taking a significant pay cut. So I've started a Patreon page, which is Patreon, Patreon/SportsScope, spelled the same way at the bottom of the screen you see there. For $5 a month, 17 cents a day, you can help support the program. You ask yourself, why SportsScope? Well, I bring in such big names such as Al Borges, former Auburn offensive coordinator, and I cover the big news in sports that the corporate media will not cover. If you want to contribute more than $5 a month, you can go use the Cash App. The cash tag is SportsScope, again, spelled the same way. Or you can go to the Zelle app, sportscope@gmail.com. SportsScope has about 5,000 followers and growing. If you want to advertise on the program, you can email me. The word is SportsScope, spelled the same way again, @gmail.com. Thank you and enjoy the program. Okay, now I am back here. I'll say this. One of the biggest stories in all of college football, there was a few stories about it is a big deal that Texas came to the SEC and they're scheduled with Oklahoma in the next few years. They're going to come to the SEC. But really, the past 3 years is this NIL and transfer portal business here in the college, where NIL means name, image, and likeness. These players can capitalize on their name, image, and likeness, and I totally agree with that 110%. But it's kind of gotten out of control. One of the big off-season stories was this unprecedented class that Texas A&M had with, according to 24/7, these guys have had one of the best classes in the history. Not miss words. Texas A&M class is the highest ranking class in history of 24/7, keeping up with these rankings with the star system. The most talent in the history of the university, according to 24/7. They had 7 5-star guys in, I want to say 14 4-star guys. Now, I know that Georgia had 8 5-star guys. One of them was Justin Fields. They had 8 5-star guys. They won the national championship last year. I want to say that was the 2018 class. And I mentioned that they will eventually win the national championship. The same thing I said about this Texas A&M team. Texas A&M, they've got 4 losses. Okay, they're playing Lane Kiffin this week. Lane Kiffin took a shot at them, saying that he was really irritated in the off season that they this is his about losing DJ Durkin, former Maryland coach. He got caught in some controversy there, a tragedy there with a player died. He was supposedly pushing the players too far. The guy's a really good recruiter, an intense coach, DJ Durkin. He was the Ole Miss defensive coordinator. He's and Kiffin was glad to have him. He got basically bought out of his contract and went over to Texas A&M. And Kiffin says, we got outbid, kind of common theme with that program, talking about in the teleconference today because A&M and Ole Miss will play. Jimbo Fisher, had a really loud offseason. I'm going to play you some sound bites in a minute from what Nick Saban said after signing day. And, of course, Jimbo Fisher's response to this major class here. A matter of fact, let me go ahead and play that first, and then I'll tell you what's going on now and what's been in the news this particular week. Nick Saban on this past year's class at Texas A&M.
A&M bought every player on their team, made a deal for name, image, and likeness. All right, we didn't buy one player. All right, but I don't know if we're going to be able to sustain that in the future because more and more people are doing it.
That was Nick Saban, and of course Jimbo goes off the deep end. Here's his response.
You ain't call me a cheat. I don't cheat and I don't lie. So I learned that when I was a kid. If you did, the old man slapped you side of the head. Maybe somebody should have slapped him.
And then he said this.
This is from a newscast.
Some people think they're God. Go dig into how God did his deal. You may find out about a guy that a lot of things you don't want to know.
Then he said this.
You coach with people like Bobby Bowden and learn how to do things. You coach with other people and learn how not to do things. There's a reason people don't go, I ain't went back and worked for him.
Fisher also.
So he's saying that Saban shouldn't be throwing stones living in a glass house. Now, they played this year. Alabama wins. But the bigger story is Texas A&M's got 4 losses. And they've had to bench players before because of curfew now. They've had to bench players. And here recently, they lost at South Carolina. And they've had to suspend 3 players. A&M suspended 3 players indefinitely, all true freshmen, from a post-game locker room incident in South Carolina. And others were suspended in the Miami game for curfew violations. They're a 3 and 4 loss team. They lost to teams like Appalachian State, South Carolina. And on top of all that, the guy that Fisher has got this $49.50 mega contract here. And the guy he replaced, Kevin Sumlin, through 55 games. Fisher's only 37-18. Sumlin was 39-16 before in 55 games. Versus the SEC, Sumlin 18-15, Fisher 22-15. SEC West, Jimbo Fisher's 500. Sumlin was above 500 versus ranked opponents. They're both below 500. Sumlin was 3-1. Fisher's 3-0. Best AP rank 4 for Sumlin, or 5 for Sumlin, 4 for Fisher. Annual salary for Fisher, $9.5 million a year. Okay? Obviously, he's not living up to that. Now, this is part of when you're paying somebody 18, 19 years old, that kind of money, which could be several $1,000s to potentially close to 7 figures, you're going to have these kind of issues where they've already had to suspend some of these players. Part of this is what my interpretation of this is he's hired, and Jimbo Fisher, now people like to put this stuff out here, this Action Network, they're trying to race bait because Sumlin's a black guy. Let me tell you why Fisher's different. Fisher's won a national championship, okay. Sumlin was a good recruiter. He was not as good a recruiter as Jimbo Fisher. This is the greatest class of all time on paper. Sumlin's never won a national championship. Jimbo Fisher has won a ring. He has a ring. He knows what it takes, okay. And the player was Jameis Winston. He was number 1 overall pick. That means no, never mind. But he's going to have to hire some coaches. He's gotten too many recruiters and not a good enough coaching. Their offense is slow as molasses. They have quarterback issues, even though Fisher's an offensive guy, normally good with quarterbacks. So they're going to have to do about what a Jim Harbaugh did, and make some adjustments to his staff, both offensively and defensively. Remember, just a few years ago, we were having this conversation before last year that maybe Harbaugh's just not cutting it. Maybe he just can't out-recruit Ohio State. He just can't he can't steal enough players from the South out of the SEC to make things work. There are a lot of people getting off the Jim Harbaugh bandwagon. I was pretty close. I was hanging on by threads. I had to call the losses like I seen them. He was getting destroyed by Ohio State. They were faster. This is what Fisher's going to have to do if he wants to keep his job, is make some adjustments. I expect them to make some firings there, and I expect them to read the riot act. These three players are five-star guys, too. One of them was a five-star guy, a couple high fours there. As far I say high four, I mean just the ranking of the player coming in. And I could tell this guy's not the type of coach to take a lot of this crap. He will pander to a certain extent, but he's not going to be pushed over. You saw he didn't back down from Nick Saban. He's not going to back down from anybody. He's made enough money where he don't really need to really work again, Jimbo Fisher. So he's going to have to probably make some staff adjustments. I think he will, and I think this team will eventually get back on track. But they are one of the biggest stories in all of college football because they were the biggest off-season story in college football, along with the fellow Texas school. They're both some of the highest endowments in all of college football are in both Texas schools, but with great money and facilities comes great expectations. Steve Sarkisian just lost last week to Oklahoma State, and he also lost to Texas Tech himself. With the top quarterback, Quinn Ewers, he was the number one prospect in the country himself. He's got Arch Manning coming up in the fall. The pressure's on him to win. Now, Fisher, I'll say still give this guy at least another year, preferably 2. I would give Fisher 2 years because then that top class will be juniors at that point. If they don't transfer, they will be juniors at that point, and then we'll see how it works out. But this NIL, it is really coming into a point now where there's got to be some guardrails. There's got to be guardrails there's been talk about this, guardrails with the transfer, which means you can't transfer in season no more. People were transferring in season and going to another team. You remember you used to, in a transfer portal, you used to have to stay out a year. You get guys like Cam Newton, they would transfer to a small school and they go undefeated that year. Who was it? I think Aaron Rodgers went to a junior college for a year, and then he went to Cal. Joe Burrow transferred from Ohio State to LSU, and then 2019. Hendon Hooker, by the way, was a transfer from Virginia Tech. I think he was like a grad transfer, and now he is way into the Heisman race here at the University of Tennessee. But this is more about the NIL and dealing with these entitled players, very young. It's hard for them to understand the value of a dollar and how quick money can go at 18, 19. You think it's going to be there all the time. One bad play, your whole football career could be over with. You got to think about the rest of your life. It's hard to get that in the head of a 19-year-old, 18-year-old who's driving a Mercedes-Benz and got several $100,000 in the bank and feels like he's got the world by its tail. Bloated press killing these kids. Yeah, that's good line there, Pickles. Good line. Yeah. Pickles says immature bunch of kids. Texas teams with deep. Yeah, they got very deep pockets there, both organizations. And 2 coaches that don't be surprised if they both get canned. I wouldn't can Fisher. I would think about it with Sark. But, man, if you've got an Arch Manning on the way, because Arch can go up and he can simply transfer. But first, guys, switching gears here, I see he's popped up on my screen here. Keith Engel from TGI Sports here. Hello, Keith. How's it going?
Hello, Robert. How are you tonight?
I was just finishing up on a college rant. You know, there was a big news story today. I don't know if you caught this, but the Eagles are not resting on their laurels. They traded for a Pro Bowl player in Robert Quinn. He's got 7 sacks this year. He played in the Pro Bowl last year to help them. I think if the playoffs started today, they could be an NFC championship contender team at least. What do you think about the Eagles so far making this big trade?
Yeah, well, I think that's a pretty aggressive move. I think they got him for just a 4th rounder too. Is that right?
They stole it, man.
Yeah, it's crazy. And I wasn't really high on Eagles before the season started. And I was wondering whether Jalen Hurts was the real deal. And
me too.
This team has proved me wrong. Hello, Pickles. Good to be here.
Corey, everybody, I like you, man. You're backed by proper. I think it's those back screens you got.
Is it?
Yeah, I've been meaning to get on those sites you sent me and order some stuff there. They look great, man.
You can get some stuff cheap too. Don't go for the expensive stuff. You can buy a package of, like 5 different shots for whatever. This one I just downloaded off the internet for free, by the way. So.
Yeah. Now this, I actually had somebody make this for me. Can you put your own symbols in there and all that?
You should be able to if you take a good enough snapshot of it, and I've done it. I've tried to do it. And you got to play with it sometimes because I don't know. I'm not that big. I'm not that up on all the technology, but
yeah,
you take a good enough picture and it'll come out okay.
Okay, nice. So how far can this Eagles team go? I know we've got 11 games to go. It's still a lot of football left.
There is, and there's nobody that, especially in the NFC, there's nobody other than the Eagles that I can say are definitely going to make a big run here. I mean, everybody's got their flaws. I mean, was the Seahawks? The whole West looks like it's upside down, for crying out loud.
Yeah, the whole NFC looks kind of crappy, other than the NFC East. And who would have thought that 6 months ago?
Yeah, and the Vikings are playing good football, but the Kirk Cousins will be their quarterback in the playoffs, so that'll eliminate.
They'll find a way to screw it up. Yeah.
They're going to have a really good record because that division is not very good. And but he will find a way to screw it up for sure.
Yeah, I think so too, man. But yeah, I just had to ask you that story that broke this afternoon. Now, yesterday I was making a rant about, I can't believe that the Bears beat New England like that. I'm just saying that. Just hear me out here. If I had just been in a coma, for God willing, and I just woke up out of coma, and you turn on Monday Night Football, and you watch the Bears, and you watch this Patriot team, what was it, 33-14 or something like that, you would think that was the Buffalo Bills or somebody. You would not know that was a team that simply a day later traded away one of their best defensive players. They're still rebuilding, and starting over with a second-year quarterback and a rookie coach. Then you go back a few weeks before that, 37 points to Lamar Jackson. Then you go back to last year, 47 in the playoff game to Josh Allen. And then the last game I think it was at New England, they lost. They give up 33. Belichick and this team, they are not drafting no speed on the outside, man. The linebacker play is terrible there. Wow. It seems like it's a thing now, Keith.
It has been for a while. They've had trouble with any quarterback that can run. Lamar Jackson, even though they beat the Ravens a couple of times here and there over the years.
A few years ago,
he gives them fits. He gave them fits this year. Josh Fields, he must have run for over 100 Monday night.
He ran for, I think it was like 86 yards, but it just looks like that nobody was even close to him, man.
All night long, and I've seen this movie before, and any athletic quarterbacks they have trouble with, and that's why they were so good against a team that had scored the most points in the NFL the week before. It would Goff, because he's a statue back there. So they're much better there than they are with somebody even who's not fully developed like Josh Fields. He made them look silly.
Well, and they've got one of the worst offensive lines according to Pro Football Focus in football.
Yeah. Well, again, I wish I was in a coma. You said if you had woken up from a coma. I was hoping to go into a coma about halftime.
Yeah.
On a different note with that game, what I don't understand, and I love Bill Belichick, obviously,
me too.
Great coach. He has gone out of his way now to create a quarterback controversy that he didn't need to do.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that. What's your take on the Zappy Mac Jones saga?
Well, Mac Jones should be the quarterback. If he wasn't ready to play Monday night, why did he play?
Yeah.
Belichick was saying all night, he was telling the sideline reporters and the guys before the game that both quarterbacks were going to play. Yeah. What's the point of that? Don't bring Mac Jones back until he's 100% healthy. There was no reason to do it.
And now they're saying that he's going to start Sunday.
Yeah, and they got the fans securely split amongst these two guys.
I can tell they were going crazy when Zappy came in.
Yeah, and he played well for 2 series, and then he played horrendous. He's
like a Jeremy Lin type of thing, Bill.
I like Bailey. He's good, but this isn't the second coming of Tom Brady. Let's not go crazy here. I mean, but Belichick's too smart to do what he did Monday night. He created a controversy that he tried so hard to say, well, let's leave hypotheticals out of this. Well, he did it himself. He put his starter in, and he wasn't in a position to play well and succeed. And then he pulls him. And now you got a problem because if you have 2 quarterbacks, you have no quarterbacks. So
I guess my question would be, you mentioned they really haven't drafted well since Scott Pioli, right?
Yeah.
15 years ago. Yeah. And you're telling me, I think the last time we talked about this, that Belichick has taken back that reign of drafting again when Kraft told him not to. Do you think maybe he should retire at the end of this year?
I want to say no, but I do think that Bob Kraft is growing weary of some of the Belichick isms, if you will. And I think at a minimum, he may take some of his power away and make him bring in some real football people. Again, you're right. Scott Pioli's the last guy that I can remember that really had a modicum of power in that front office. And he did a pretty good job when he left New England and went to Kansas City too, by the way. So
and I was just throwing up old names on my show the other day. You don't see the speed like Willie McGinnis, Laura Malloy, Teddy Bruschi. They're just not covering those edges no more. They got good corners. Johns is playing good, playing well. But they just have no pass rush. Judon's okay, but man, they're a shell of themselves.
The front seven has not been good. The defensive backfield has been a surprise. I thought that was going to be the big problem this year on the corners, especially.
I didn't see that. Pro Football Focus has him as the 4th rated. I think John Johns or something like that. One of the better corners. But if you got that kind of running game and a quarterback that just people's not even – he's like 15 yards up, then they're just pushing him out of bounds.
You need to know about their linebacking situations. They signed Jamie Collins for the 12th time in the last 10 years. I mean, if Halloween's coming, so's Jamie Collins in New England. So
man, stay off that synthetic marijuana. You remember that?
I do.
God. Yeah, he was looking for his mom at the police station there. Oh my God. So I just thought, I said, man, I got to bring this up to him. And I'm like you, and I want to make this clear. I'm a big Belichick. I've watched 3 documentaries on Belichick. The 2 Bills, the Nick Saban, Bill Belichick one, that thing he did with back in 2009 with NFL Network. He did one, but there we had his son. His son was only like 14 there. And his son's working on the staff now, right?
Yeah, both of them are. And maybe a little too much. Stevie Belichick's got a lot of power on that defense, and maybe that's part of the problem.
Nepotism. That's the word I'm looking for. It's kind of a problem in the NFL if you think about it.
And that's another thing that may come back and bite Bill at some point, is the power that he's given Stevie on that defense. He doesn't hold a coordinator title because they just don't give him out, so they don't have to pay money. But if you're going to bring Matt Patricia back, and he's done, listen, the offense has gotten better. Patricia's gotten better in home place. But if I was going to bring Matt Patricia back, I don't know why I'm not making him my defensive coordinator when he was so good here the first time doing it. I don't get it. But
well, you kind of hope that McDaniels gets fired and you could bring him back. But they just won last week.
Yeah. I root against them every week, hoping maybe he can come back. But
Pickle says Kraft was allowed Bill Belichick to dig his own grave. In a certain sense, yeah. I mean, we were just talking just when you left Mac and Jack and Jim Jeffcoat show about coaches winning Super Bowls at other teams, coming to a new organization. Mike Holmgren, for example, with the Seattle Seahawks, and they get too much power. John Gruden, that was part of his issue in his second stint with the Raiders. It's like, how about let's stay with the system that worked? Be a great coach. Tell the general manager what you want, but don't make the pitch. That they're working all offseason while you're busting your hump trying to get the win week to week. That's part of the problem. I think these guys get too much power.
You're absolutely right. I mean, we can go back to Bill Parcells when he left New England because he wanted to buy the groceries if they want.
Yeah, I remember that.
They wanted me to cook the dinner there. Let me shop for some of the groceries. Well, Bill Parcells wanted to draft Rick Meyer over Drew Bledsoe. That's about all I need to know about his acumen.
Pat White in Miami, remember that?
Pat White in Miami, yeah. So Bill Parcells is a great football coach. He should have just been a great football coach. And Belichick, again, that maybe he needs to concentrate there because they need his attention on the field, and maybe not in that front office.
Yeah, and he's a great, and I still think he's probably still the greatest of all time. But man, you think Kraft would just tell it, hey man, you cannot make these picks anymore. I mean, coach, look at the film that we're getting killed here. You know, Pickle said Gruden's lost his way. Switching gears to college here, another disappointment. Texas A&M. It's 7 5-star guys, 18 4-star guys. Great, according to 24/7, supposedly the greatest class of all time. You know, and now they've got 4 losses. And prior to that, they've had top 10 classes. My thing is probably this NIL stuff that's he's had to suspend 3 players indefinitely, freshmen, by the way. Jimbo Fisher. They got DJ Durkin. He was a defensive coordinator last year from Ole Miss. I think he's probably invested too much into these coordinators, plus this NIL. You got 18 and 19-year-olds driving probably the school in Mercedes-Benz because they're making almost 7 figures, and now they're not wanting to show up to practice. There was a fight in the locker room. What's your take on the A&M?
Pretty much the same thing. I mean, year after year, he's winning these recruiting battles, and that's all you hear about is the top 10 classes. This year's, as you said, supposedly one of the best ever, but at some point you got to turn it into wins, and that hasn't happened at A&M for Jimbo. And partly with the great recruiting classes he's had, he hasn't found a really good quarterback, and his offense is a bit pedestrian. He's an offense. He's supposed to be an offensive guru, and his offense is kind of looking prehistoric right now compared to the rest of them in the SEC and around college football. And if you're an A&M fan, you might as well get used to this because he ain't going anywhere.
They're paying him a lot of money.
It's going to cost him to go away. That's not happening.
Yeah, I think they can do it, but I wouldn't recommend it. I think it's very similar to Jim Harbaugh. About 5 years ago, we were saying the same thing. I'm a big Jim Harbaugh guy. But I was like, man, he's getting killed by Ohio State, and he couldn't get a quarterback. And I think he started firing people. He started getting people in there that was better coaches. He was too much into recruiting. If you remember, he was a guy that spent the night at a recruit's house.
Yeah.
He was really going crazy, taking the kids down, the students down to Florida and practicing and stuff just to pick up recruits in the middle of spring break. Sometimes you can be too much into that and not a much. You need Jimmys and Joes. We just talked about that in the NFL with Bill Belichick, but you still need the X's and O's, and you need that right balance, I think.
Yeah, I think the best thing that happened to Michigan and Harbaugh was 2 years ago when they did take away some of his power. They insisted he make changes in his staff. They slashed his salary.
That's the key too.
Yeah,
Sometimes these guys need an ego check, man.
yeah. I think it humbled him a little bit and maybe centered him a little bit because the team's been very, very good since. And even without a great quarterback, I like McCarthy now a lot better than I liked McNamara last year. I think they've got a better chance this year to maybe have a chance in the playoff should they get there.
So last time we talked, you didn't think they had a shot at Ohio State after what they did to Penn State. What do you think about Michigan now?
I think they're very good. I mean, I'm not weighing everything on Penn State only because James Franklin can't beat top 10 teams. He's 2-19 now.
Oh, wow.
And
I'm still thinking of him as the Vanderbilt coach that would beat Florida.
Yeah, he did a great job at Vanderbilt. And he's done a decent job at Penn State, but he doesn't beat good teams. He doesn't beat Penn State and Ohio State unless they're no good. And
that is true.
We'll find out because Ohio State's got to go play them this week at Penn State. So we'll find out. Michigan and Ohio State.
Liking that, Ohio State. Yeah,
Michigan and Ohio State, they only play 4 road games the entire year, both of them. That's a tremendous advantage they've got. I don't know how the schedule works out that way, but teams like TCU are playing seven road games. Ohio State doesn't even leave the state of Ohio, but like twice all year for crying out loud.
Yeah,
it'll be fun. Listen, Ohio State, Michigan's going to be a really, really good game this year, and it's going that league comes down to the two of them because unless Penn State somehow gets it together this week, which I don't think they can.
Yeah,
it's going to be Michigan, Ohio State, and I give Michigan a decent chance. As I said, I think the quarterback change has been very important because he's more athletic than McNamara. He can do more things, and when you get playing teams, not just Ohio State, but the SEC teams that you're going to need to play to win a championship,
you need how Georgia beat them last year in the playoff.
Yeah,
two drives, I knew that was over with, man.
Easily, they didn't belong on the same field. They weren't athletic enough, and that's easy to see. And the Big Ten's got that problem, except Ohio State has been able to keep up athletically. But Michigan not so much. This year might be a different story. Corum is going to be, he might make a run at the Heisman here, the running back. He's been really good.
Really?
He's moved up into the top 5. I mean, he's still a long shot because C.J. Stroud and Hooker from Tennessee are the two favorites, but he's been making great strides. He's a great running back. And then you add McCarthy's athleticism to it. This team's much better than it was last year, I think.
Yeah, they ran all over Penn State like that. I didn't expect that. I thought they would win. I didn't think they would win like that.
I didn't think they'd blow them off the field either, but again, I'm just not a big James Franklin fan because you can't be. I don't know how you get a big extension like he got another one with a big extension last year. Him, Mel Tucker, Jimbo gets an extension because they're
Michigan State having a down year too.
Yeah, their name comes up for all these jobs that are open, and they go, "We got to lock them up. We got to lock them up forever." Well, now you're stuck because you're not going to pay these guys $60-70 million to go away. They're guaranteed
money. I mean, that is crazy. Tennessee, what do you think about? Do you think Tennessee is this a mediocre rise? Could they be like the 2019 LSU team, or do you think maybe they've just been very fortunate these last few weeks? What's your take on a team like Tennessee coming out of nowhere like this?
Yeah, I think they're a really good team. They were getting better last year. Josh Heupel's had a kind of a slow rise this 3 years there. I think he built this team the right way. Hooker deciding to come back for one more year when he was at first going to leave. Yeah, has been a huge deal because he's so good that they're just, again, the speed all over the field with this Tennessee team is amazing. That if you like offensive football, and look, I like to see a little defense being played, but that Alabama-Tennessee game was like a track meet. I don't know if it's because the defenses are bad, but the offenses are just so good and so fast. And it's going to be interesting. Tennessee's still got who they got this week?
Oh, the
Kentucky, which is, they're a scrappy team. They got to be careful, but they still got Georgia. That's going to be the big game. Coming up here in a couple.
Do you
weeks.
think game day will be there?
Yes,
in Athens.
I do.
It's going to be possibly 1 versus 3.
It would be an upset, major upset if they were not there. But they've gone to some strange places this year. They've been to Lawrence, Kansas for the first time ever. They're at Jackson State this week.
I really like that coach in Kansas. I mean, they were god awful garbage. And for him to do what I know they've lost a few now, but
they may not win another game, but he's still done a great job. Even if they don't win another game, he won't be there long.
Yeah, somebody will come after that guy. So you're watching Tennessee. You're very educated about the college game. Go back a few years. Remember when Ed Orgeron went undefeated with LSU, only not to do anything. His job was on the he was on the hot seat before Joe Burrow and after Joe Burrow. Let's go back a few years before that. Cam Newton, 2010. Gene Chizik, very controversial hire, losing record. I think he came from Iowa State or something like that.
I'm trying to think where he might have been. It might have been Iowa State. You may be right.
Yeah, Gene Chizik.
Yeah,
8-5 year one, year two they go undefeated and win a national championship. Or is Heupel more like a guy like Dabo Swinney from Clemson, where he kind of got a little bit better, then popped? What do you think about Tennessee? Do you think this is a one-year wonder?
I think it's possible. It's going to be very hard. Unless you're, Alabama or Georgia, it's going to be hard to have sustained success. Or LSU, even LSU is up and down. They haven't had long periods of success in a row. Even before Ed Orgeron, Les Miles had really good teams. He gets fired. He wins a national championship.
Yeah.
2 of the last 3 coaches that won national championships got fired at LSU. So it's not easy to keep your job. Yeah. And it's not easy to sustain success when you are going up against Alabama and Georgia every year. And 2 of the best coaches in college football, the best coach in college football history, number 1, and Nick Saban. Yeah. And Kirby Smart is making his own name as well now. So yeah,
and that Will Anderson, I read, I think he's supposed to be like a top 5 pick defensive player on Alabama. Now we'll see about Tennessee. Now Georgia in 2 weeks. Now hopefully Tennessee will beat Kentucky, and
I think they will.
Georgia will beat Florida. Hopefully.
Georgia better be careful this week. They're
21.5 point favorites. That's huge.
It is huge, but that's a big rivalry game. A neutral site. It's a crazy atmosphere. Why Kirby Smart wants to make that a home and home series and do away with where they play in Gainesville is beyond me. But because this is a tradition, playing where they play. Yeah. And it's a game you can get caught up looking ahead because they've got this big game with Tennessee right around the corner.
Yeah.
And you got to be careful. Florida's had not that good a year, but they're good enough where if you fall asleep for a couple of quarters, you could be in trouble.
It could be close because they got that team. Nobody thought Florida would beat Utah in week 1. And I said, no, I like that team speed down there.
Well, remember, they went to Missouri, that tough place to go play football at Kirby Smart, and they almost got beat by Missouri.
They almost got beat. They got bored. They got bored that week.
And that might have woke them up too, though. So that might be just what they needed.
Yeah, they've been blowing out everybody ever since. I mean, they got they got 2 first-round guys, 2 top 10 guys.
Yeah.
1 mock draft for Georgia. They got 2 defensive guys that are supposed to go in the top 10.
Again, last year, how many did they have?
It was unprecedented last year, Keith.
Yeah, but they have 15 guys get drafted, I think.
Yeah, look at Carlos. He's really, Carlos, met him in college. He lives in New York, but he drinks a lot of orange and white Kool-Aid down here. And I told him that is bad. You can diabetes, drinking too much sugar.
I didn't say they would necessarily fall off the map here next year. I just said sustained success will be very difficult. And it's historically, has Tennessee had any sustained success? They've had some pretty good coaches. Phil Fulmer was a really good coach, especially when he had Peyton Manning.
That was my thing, Keith. I think that you have to recruit at a high level if you want that. They've got a really big-time quarterback, this guy. Nico something out of California. He supposedly got a big-time NIL deal. Carlos is right. They'll have a top 10 next year. Yeah. But you have to recruit close to 5th, like a Clemson, like a Georgia, Alabama to have anything close to sustained success. Ohio State always recruits well.
Yeah,
That's your top 5 right there in the recruiting class. I just named them.
yeah, exactly, and it's not a surprise that these are the teams that are in contention year after year after year. And
People hate it when I say that, but hey, it's just the truth. I mean, you got to coach them up. We saw A&M, but I think that's more of an outlier than anything. If you got good players, you're going to win big in this league. Hey, let me ask you about this World Series here. Dusty Baker, how close has this guy been? Is he going to get over the hump this year and finally win a World Series, Keith?
I think he will. I think the Astros are that good, and the Phillies have been a great story. And I'm having a hard time. I like Dusty. I think Dusty's done a great job through his career, and he's just not been able to get over that last hurdle. I'd love to see him win a World Series, but I'm torn here. I'm a Yankee fan, so I don't have a real rooting interest. But I do have Dusty to kind of root for. And I like the way the Astros play baseball. They're just so good. But I also got a rooting interest in Philadelphia because Rob Thompson is the manager there, and he has done a tremendous job since taking over for Joe Girardi. He was with the Yankees for a long time. He's a lifer in baseball.
Oh, that is unbelievable. I forgot they fired Girardi in the middle of the season.
Yep.
Plus, we don't need Jamie's head to swell up anymore.
No, that's probably where I probably got to draw
between Eagles 6-0 and Phillies in the World Series. I mean, he is going to be on. He's already on cloud 9.
Yeah, he'll be unbearable. So
he's dressed. He's putting makeup on in the morning.
I'll have to root against Rob because I'd like to see Dusty get his World Series. And that Astro team, you know what? I love people that get all over him for the whole sign
scandal. Yeah,
everybody's doing the same thing. They got caught, and so what? I mean, the
stick stuff on the gloves. What is that called? Black tar. What is it called? Pine tar.
Oh no! Ask Carlos about that. He and I we just had a little row about that on Sunday because he
made bad New Yorker
about Justin Verlander, but spider tack. So we can only give advantages to hitters, not to pitchers ever.
On the roster this season, I don't know what Carlos is talking about. Oh, I think he's just doing hot Harper and Haskins. Yeah, it will be a good one. I think about. It seems like Baker. He kind of reminds me of the manager for who is he with the Orioles, and then Buck Showalter. He gets 1,000 jobs. He can never finish the job. Remember when Baker left Mark Pryor? How about that name? In too long for the Cubs back in 2003 and Kerry Wood, and same thing. It seems like he didn't make the right moves back in 2002 against the Angels when he was with the Giants. He's blown a lot of big games, man.
Yeah, now in 2003 he had a little help blowing that game by Steve Bartman as well. Another great 30 for 30. If you haven't seen it on ESPN.
Yeah, I remember that.
That was a good
Pryor. Pryor wasn't right after that.
No, he pitched a lot of innings he did blow a lot of arms out. Sure. But
that's
a lot
my
of
big knock on him over the years. I want him to win too because I feel bad for the guy.
Look, they're the best team, but the Phillies are just on this kind of. It's a shame that they had to sit so long. These teams have had nearly a week off again.
Oh yeah,
before they start up Friday night, and I don't. Why we don't need these long lapses between the games? It's not good. Baseball players are used to playing every day.
Look how late it is. Now, I'm telling you, I think that they need to put the World Series on Labor Day weekend. The pennant races need to finish on. Regular season need to finish July 31st. In August, they should play in the playoffs. No later than Labor Day, the World Series. Do not compete with the NFL, Keith.
That's very radical. I don't think that'll happen. I do know what you mean. I don't want to see November baseball either. And this year's going even later because they started later because of the lockout. So it could go to November 5th or 6th, I think, if they go all the way.
Yeah,
maybe later than that. They start next week's November, right?
Yeah.
So they start.
Well, Halloween will be next But by the way, it's Nick Saban's birthday. I think he's going to be like 71 or something. And that's next Tuesday.
That's November 1st, right?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Well, the World Series don't start until Friday.
So they played a weekend. I guess next weekend it would end, so it could be the 5th or 6th, I guess. Yeah.
Especially if it goes into 6 or 7 games. I really think Houston looks great, man, with that 1.88 ERA. Did you hear about this story out of Houston? This guy that owns these furniture stores, he made this huge bet for Mattress Mac.
Mattress Mac, yeah. Who'd he bet on?
Got to get him on.
Oh man, he's always making these crazy bets. He's on a Super Bowl and betting like
$75 million. Keith, what do you think about that?
Who'd he bet? I didn't see it. Who'd he bet?
Well, he bet for Houston to win. He's out of Houston area.
Yeah,
he's going to help out and give discounts and money back to.
So he had a futures bet on them winning the World Series. That's worth 75.
He kept betting it during the summer when they were in a slump, and when it went up to, as a multimillionaire, he owns 3 furniture stores out of Houston. And if they win, he'll collect. It's the largest bet ever to pay off at $75 million. That's legal.
There's illegal betting out there.
Well, that's it. That's just what I read.
I believe it. Now, listen, this guy's been on a lot of stuff. Good for him. I hope he does something good with the money. It seems like he tries to. So good for him. I'll root for him.
Yeah. So do you like Houston to win? That's your prediction?
I do. I think, again, if you just want to look at the two teams, and again, we know the game's not played on paper, but they throw so many pitchers at you. It's just, they're so good out of the bullpen, the starting pitchers. And I know, Carlos thinks they all cheat, but so what? Hitters have had every advantage given to them in the last 50 plus years. Since 1968, Robert, every single rule change and change in baseball has been to favor the offensive side of baseball. Lower the mound.
Same with football.
You put in a DH. Same with football. You put in a DH. You make the baseballs harder. You make the bats harder. You make the ballpark smaller. But the pitchers can't use a little bit of spider tack because, then we aren't going to hit 60 home runs.
Yeah, that is ridiculous. I've always been okay. I've never been mad about the whole sticking thing with the gloves.
No, me either. Who cares?
If the guy can knock the ball out of your hand, if you're a receiver, what difference does it make? A stick? It ain't that bad. It's not super glue.
Well, unless you're Lester Hayes, he was like, he couldn't even make it out by the time the game was over. He had so much stickum all over him.
Man, my dad actually told me about that. Hey, Keith, I appreciate you coming on, man. We get to talking. This goes pop fast,
Absolutely.
Man.
Love it.
Yeah. I'll hey, I may see you next week. I don't know. Are you going to be on Mac and Jack and Jim?
I'm back on this week. Yeah, I was on vacation last week, so I wasn't able to jump on, but I'll be there Sunday. Yeah.
Oh, okay. I thought you had another show you was juggling. Pickles says Lester Hayes. You had to see Lester Hayes.
You had to see it. Sure.
Yeah, my dad told me this guy had all this stuff on. It looked crazy looking. These players put Vaseline on them. I've heard so you slide off their jerseys. It's some crazy. They'll do anything to get an edge.
Yeah, well, you gotta because it's a razor thin edge, winning and losing, right? And you got
especially when it's really, really super competitive like that, especially in football.
Right? If you're not cheating, you're not trying, all right?
All right, Belichick. Hey man, thanks again, buddy. I'll see you.
All right, thanks, Robert.
Have a good one. All right, guys, I want to thank you all for coming on the program. If you like the show, share the show. I will be back on tonight. I will be back on tomorrow, 7 p.m. Central Time. Hopefully, I'll have Jack Hurst on. I wanted to get into some NBA tonight, but there was that breaking story with the Philadelphia Eagles. So you all have a good night. I will be back on tomorrow, same place, same time. Hopefully around 7:15, we'll have Jack Hirsch on. I'll ask him some of the same talking points, and then I'll throw in a few extra things that I haven't got a chance to ask him yet. So thank you, guys.